Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Pod Jerky. I am your host, Tom, and on today's episode, we have our special guest, Joe Achakji, and he is a musician as well as a digital marketing specialist. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. Thanks, Tom.
No problem. So getting into your career path or into the music first, which one do you want to discuss?
I'd have to say it all started with music, so why not start there?
Okay, perfect. So you did start off with music, and I believe you dropped your first album, in 2007?
Yeah, it's about right. Yeah, if you did some research there, I could see. 2006, I believe, was pretty much around that time. 2006, 2007 was, well, technically, I've had stuff in 2000 that was released, but it was more underground. So officially, the album that was released in 2006 was distributed, so you could say officially, yeah.
Okay, and your genre is, what do you classify it as? Electronic, dance music, hip hop?
Well, that's a good question. A lot of people ask me this. Is basically it started as Urban World, which was a mix of French, Spanish, Arabic, and then it moved on to EDM, so electronic dance music. And just now, I just have fun with acoustic sounds like guitars, keyboards, and I just like to mess around a bit more with the natural sounds.
And you go by the name of Excella?
That's right, Excella. Okay. So I've been known for that for many years. It stuck around throughout my career and just with me, and it's just something that resonates with me because it just represents doing the best, what you want to do in life, doing what you love and doing it well.
That's your personal mantra, right?
That's my personal mantra, exactly.
Yeah. So what was the motivation to get into music?
Well, I don't think I think there's no, like when you get into music, it's not necessarily motivation. I think it's just something that pulls you in. And it's always been like that since the age of 5. Like since I heard, as you can see behind me, Michael Jackson, Billie Jean.
Yeah.
That was the first song that I heard on a record, on a vinyl in my uncle's basement, just jamming to it. And it's like, it becomes intuition. It's like the first thing that you kind of learn how to sense, if you will. So then everybody has that thing, right? So when I was younger, it was just that I would hear it, and then it would just kind of compel you. And then further along the road, there's just been all these signals and all these signs around me that kind of like even amplified the passion even more. Like I went on family trips to like Florida in the Hard Rock Cafe, and I'd watch a guitarist play a solo, and it was like, wow, like I'm vibing this, like I want to do that. So that at that age, it's like, it's something that pulls you in. And then at many times and further down the road, even when I wanted to quit for some reason, it just got me back into it. Like even in university, when I went to pursue my studies, there was other opportunities that opened up in music, and I didn't necessarily go after them. They kind of like just appeared. And that's the kind of like the thing that's been constantly luring me in, is that it has never gone away. And that's kind of like a passion I like to hold on to.
Yeah. And I've had another independent music artist on the show already, and he said kind of the same thing, where he didn't kind of pursue the art of music, but it's just in him. It's part of who he is, and he's never going to give it up. And he's also a fantastic artist. And if he sticks with his music, it actually is really good. But at this time right now, it's just kind of put onto the back burner. But he says it never dies. It's always with him, and he'll continue to do music as well.
I agree 100%. I mean, it never does leave you. It's not something that you need to have your health for necessarily. Like you don't have to be, it's not like an athlete where you have to be, fully performing. I mean, all you need to do is be able to play an instrument, and you can see people at very old ages just playing the piano like crazy. So, that's something that's in you and will stay in you.
So when did you realize that you had the talent to do this?
Probably high school. It was probably not a conscious thing like me saying, oh, I have a talent for it, but it was more of the reaction of people seeing them in high school, where, me and a buddy of mine who still does music till this day, he's a producer in Montreal, works with great artists, and we linked up, and it became a way that I wanted to express art. And the more I would do it, the more I would study it, and then I would present it to people. It started with just like small groups, friends, families, but then slowly but surely it becomes the thing that everybody just notices you for. And it's just like, oh yeah, in high school, that's what we became known for. If you ask anybody who was in our age group, they would say, back then we had a group called G.I. Joe. My buddy's name was G and I was Joe, and together we were G.I. Joe. So it was this funny thing, but that's when at that young age we were able to experiment and have fun with it. And I think at that age, that's when we started realizing that, I don't know if we realized that it was a talent, but more probably of a passion, because the more we did it, the more we got better at it, and the more we wanted to study other artists and other people who inspired us and other musicians.
Now, we've done a 5-part series so far. We're just wrapping up our 5th episode on Canadian music, and we've actually talked to quite a few guests. So we've actually been in contact with Thrust. We've been in contact with Finger 11, Brian Adams, actually, Chuck Clare, a couple of the big Canadian artists that have been out there. And their one thing about Canadian music was, it was so hard to get noticed in Canada. Did you see any hurdles being in Canada as opposed if you were in the US for music?
Yeah, there's like a huge dialogue on that. And I think that over the years, my mentality has been evolving with it. But there was a time where I would say, yes, it was difficult as a Canadian artist, but it's more of a paradigm, I think, because most people in their own country, I find it difficult for them to be known. I don't know, it's just because maybe it's too common. You're all too common to people here. But when you travel and you go and you start traveling to, say, to France, or even you go down to New York, or you start collaborating with people, it's just like people just associate that with you making moves and you kind of like expanding your network and so on. And I'm not the first, I'm not the last to say it. Celine Dion, you'll have other artists that have been in our surroundings, like even in the French market, like Corneille, you'll have Massari, you'll have Carl Wolf, you'll have all these artists. And a lot of them had to travel and go far, and they went to get MTV awards in other countries and such things. And Celine Dion also did this. I remember reading her biography, and she got second place or first place at some European contest at a very young age. And when by the time she came back to Canada, it's like all the news reporters were waiting for her at the airport. So, I mean, it's a common thing, but I think that now the consciousness, people are beginning to understand that it doesn't matter where you are in the world. You can be in Timbuktu and you could be an amazing musician or artist. And as long as you have the internet to relay that music to the world, then there's a chance that you can make it. And the proof of it is, we have tons of artists that came out of Ottawa too. Like, I'm in Ottawa, Canada. I lived in Montreal. I have a lot of family in Toronto as well, and we've been back and forth. But, there's artists that started here and people who are in the industry, like friends of ours that eventually became managers of the people like The Weeknd, or it's not far. Like Belly's from Ottawa, Massari, Carl Wolf's back and forth. So it's possible, more and more you realize that it's not necessarily a geographical thing. I think today there's a paradigm shift at least.
Well, yeah, that's interesting because talking to the other artists, I mean, they were coming out in the 90s, the early 2000s, and social media wasn't as prevalent as it is today. And it's a lot easier to get your material out today than it was back in the 90s. So they were having a hard time distributing it. And what they talked about was if you didn't have the cash back then, there was no chance that you were getting your name out there because you were just trying to shop it to different record producers or trying to get your stuff made onto like CDs or cassettes or whatever it was back then. But now with the social media platforms, all of your stuff getting released onto YouTube or any social media platform for that matter gets you a lot of likes, gets you a lot of hits and all that stuff. So it was a lot harder back then than it is today to get noticed.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I just think that in the past, things were very much centralized. If you look at radios, for example, they were much more prevalent. You would play your song on the radio and you could instantly be noticed by a large part of the community or the country for that matter. If you go even further, the time where they only had one radio station for the whole country in the US, they would have a vinyl and they'd play that vinyl. Whoever got on that radio station was an instant star. And more and more what's been happening is that music has been, I think it's just been, I don't want to say diluting, but what happened when iTunes came around and when the digital world came around, it made this even playing field for all musicians, big record labels and small artists alike. And that kind of unbalanced even the larger record labels. They're like, what's going on? Like even Warner, Universal, all these, some of them went bankrupt. They stopped. Sony is not operating like they used to. They're really looking for the pulse of the independent artists now. And, and they want to see what they can do first on their own, directly connecting with their audience and, via iTunes, YouTube, social media, and all those platforms. And then, if there's a chance, like, for example, Justin Bieber got noticed on YouTube. What an incredible time when you can just play a song and that was not a professional video by whatsoever. It was just him sitting down and just got a lot of views. So, it shows you like how times have changed. I wouldn't say it's necessarily easier now. I wouldn't say it's easier, but there was a time where there was a window that opened and it's just now it's like the website boom. In 2000s, it was like, wow, websites. You got a website, you were like shooting up. And then look at us now. Everybody and anyone and their mothers having a website. Now the game is, how are you going to differentiate yourself from the masses?
That's right. Yeah.
So it's a bit of a different game,
Well, I was talking to another independent artist. He was saying that the way that it's working now is they used to have contracts with the record companies. And now with the whole social media platform, what they're doing is giving 360 deals. So it's just basically coming back around, seeing what you can do to promote yourself. And then they're taking a cut to try and help you promote on as well. Yep. So it's a lot different than it was back, 20 years ago before all this stuff came out. So that's just an interesting fact that he had brought up.
Yeah. And even the contracts that record labels would draft up back then, some of them were aggressive, but now we're hearing a lot about the 360 360 deals. It's probably over that right now, but 360 deals where the record label wants everything, wants to touch all revenue streams for the artist, like everything. So it's changed. I haven't been looking at or comparing record labels very much lately, because when I released my album, it was a choice. I remember one day I was there, and it was in 2006, and yeah, in 2006 that's when I actually created that record label. And I remember they're sitting there with a lawyer in Montreal, I don't know what, in Bonaventure, on like, I think it was, I don't know, they're on the top level. And we went there and I met him. And my main goal of that meeting was to know whether I should take the approach of independent artist or if I should actually prepare myself for a record label. And at that time I said, no, like the world's going indie. Like everybody's going independent. Everybody's like the way social is going, the way everything's going. Yeah, like you'll have more budget, more marketing dollars behind you if you have a record label. But again, like they'll take so much, and it's much more difficult to get that deal that you're looking for, especially as an upcoming artist. So the independent route really was something that was really interesting at that time. And but I learned the hard way, because right after that meeting, he's like, okay, so how do you want to settle this meeting right now? It was $410 an hour. So I said, okay, there you go. Welcome to the indie world.
Yeah. So speaking of that, your album in 2007 was called Nouvelle Autre Faire. I'm not very French, so I don't really pronounce it that great. What's the meaning of that album? What's the title translate into? It's something around the lines of New Old Day or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. You actually got it pretty well. Nouvelle Autrefois is just the second word there. So Nouvelle Autrefois is like, I never actually sat down to try to translate this in English, but it's like a new past, if you will, or a new outlook on the past. So I think that was the whole concept of the album. It was just like in life, sometimes what you'll do is you'll go through things, and then you'll have memories, or you'll have this kind of like feeling of, oh, I went through this time in my life, and it was either a good memory, a bad memory, or whatever it was. But then sometime like after a couple of years, you might look back and you might have a different feeling or understand the situation or that life moment, let's just say, in a different way. So that's what it meant. It meant like it was a nouvelle autrefois, because you can be looking behind and understand or see something new, just by elevating yourself and living, just kind of evolving.
Now, a lot of your music, did it come from inspirations just from life experiences, or was it more just for the fun of it? Which one was it? Because I know some artists just kind of write music, just, whatever comes into their head, and they just write it. They don't base it on any personal experience. How is it for you?
I love that question, because like what it is basically it was a mix. It would always start, I think most artists do this as well, but you start with like some life experience, and then you take it somewhere else. You take it to another, it's almost like you'll amplify it and let your imagination take it to extremes, if you will. So like it will start like the seed itself, it has to start somewhere with some kind of inspiration. A lot of times I'd like to walk around, just observe. Like I would literally spend the day in the metro, or I'd spend the day walking around at night and just observing everywhere. Because then when you're putting yourself in a state of just sensing, feeling, observing, looking around, that's when I think a lot of my best work actually came about as well. Sometimes I would dig a little bit deeper, and I'd think about something that I just wanted to kind of like put out there based on experience. And a lot of artists will do that. It's just an outlet. It's an outlet way to say and express either hard times, good times, fun times, anything. But in general, I think it's the mix of the two, which is really just like real life experience. But then there's a part of it that you want to use your imagination. You want to take the listeners somewhere else. And then more and more as I went on, there's a couple of other songs in the album, like you'll hear, and this is old music, by the way, but since we're talking about it, we're talking about career path, it's fun to kind of look back and just talk about these things, because today is the music that I would do would be completely different. Well, you know what? Not completely different. You can't deny completely your past. It is part of you. My point was, I was more and more, I was having fun with it. And I was just like, one of the songs that became a single, J'aime jamais, was a song that was written in like maybe an hour, whereas I would normally spend times like really ridiculously thinking about rhymes and making it in the French language, especially. There's a style that's called, in poetry, I'm sure it exists in English too, but it's Alexandrin, the Alexandrian maybe. And what it is, it's 12 syllables per line with a rhyme, but it was more of a rap style. So it became poetry. I would take a lot of time. I'd be very meticulous. I would actually have my dictionary, my synonym book, and I'd literally I would stack up my references, and I'd really want to write quality lyrics, and words. And then more and more as I went on, it was just more about fun, more about just playing the music itself. itself and melodies. And that's where I kind of am today. So, but I can't, like I said, I can't deny the past. It's something that kind of also helped me. Like whenever I wanted to dig into the past and try a similar type of style, I could, you know?
So two of my favorite songs on there, and you have to excuse my French because I don't really speak French. I'm still from my high school French. The first one is La Freedom.
Okay, nice. I haven't heard that in a while.
Freedom, looking for the right way to shine freedom. And I think I found mine. Je suis responsable de ma vie et tu es de la tienne. La planète que je cherche n'est pas dans le système. J'attends pas que devienne l'art sous les arts sur le pacte culturel destination. Mais la question se pose, pourquoi a-t-il visé ma maison? L'heure de ma jeunesse, vous connaissez déjà l'histoire. Le passé est en arrière, c'est en un futur qu'il faut croire. Mais croire en quoi si nous voulons coexister? La présence de la fierté rend difficile l'action d'échanger. M'évader pour contempler sur les événements de ma vie. Près de la cathédrale, j'ai fragmenté en deux ma biographie sur la pierre tombale de ma grand-mère lorsqu'elle est décédée. J'ai retrouvé mon crayon en sa mémoire et j'ai touché le passé. Ce que j'ai cru, personne ne vu. Ce que j'ai vu, personne ne cru. Tellement que la scène m'est apparue. Ne me le suis une fois de plus. Je visais le monde entier sans exagérer comme certains me connaissent. Donnez-moi la chance de réaliser ma promesse.
That song, like, it has a really good flow to it, a really good beat to it. What's that song about?
Wow, that's a good one. I think that's the freedom that everybody wants. I'm just trying to remember like some of the words in it because
my French isn't good, so I don't understand it, right? So
yeah, I mean, I think the chorus was a bit in English, so you had some words like I think it was freedom when you know your life is on the line. Freedom, you gotta. Anyway, it was more about it's about freedom of the moment, freedom of your time. Like everybody, it's just the freedom that everybody seeks, whether it be financial freedom, whether it be freedom from, you know, your daily 9 to 5 or just the country that you live in and the rules that you have to abide by, or just even the being, there's a word and I can't remember, but just in society, when society just kind of like closes in on you. For example, the Black Lives Matter thing that happened, it's another example of it. So it's meant to be a song that people can relate to and people can interpret in their own way, because freedom to everyone is different. So what it would be for you and what it would be for your neighbor would be a completely different interpretation.
Yeah, and the other one that I wanted to play a little clip of and discuss was Elle pleure dehors.
Oh yeah.
I can't say that properly as well.
Oh yeah, Elle pleure dehors.
Entre station, la tranquillité que l'image que la noire soit réfléchie. Et pense le temps que j'ai passé dans le métro de la vie. Une conscience sans connaissance, obscurcie par l'ignorance. Mais non pas par l'intelligence et non pas plus par des substances. Avec les types et les pieds, je vois que le site prend la vie brisée. J'aurais bien aimé la connaître, mais certaines choses sont pas easy. J'ai su reconnaître sur l'intérêt, mais je n'ai pas manqué mon arrêt. Maintenant je l'écris mais sans regret, car le studio est à mon accès. La planète ne cessera jamais de tourner. Pour chaque aventure, une nouvelle journée. Feu de l'étoile vient de se créer, le passé hebdomadaire SVP. Comme un violoniste d'un orchestre. Elle veut pleurer mais 902e força. Expériencer dans la vie pour savoir qu'il faut danser. Elle s'était lancée, sans peur de leur pensée. Et maintenant c'est leur choix. Embarque dans la vie et que l'amour te reçoive.
So in French, you could say il pleut dehors, which means it's raining outside. So instead of saying that, I flipped it and said elle. Instead of il is for a man, elle is for a woman. So I switched it to she. Instead of rain, she cries outside.
Yeah.
That was that one. That song is pretty interesting. I think there's 3 pretty intense verses. Each one was a moment captured in real life, of experience in real life. Like I could remember vividly walking down, you know, at night and crossing paths with this girl, for example, where she was wearing a hat and then turning around and she disappeared. But then there was a man sitting on a park bench and reading his newspaper. And then I kind of transported myself to a time when I was in this conference where there was these famous authors that were giving speeches. And I kind of jumped from memory to memory. And then one of the verses actually talk about my experience in the metros of Montreal. So that one was interesting. That's me carrying a notebook and going around, roaming around, and literally just writing ideas down everywhere that I went. And just the melody itself and the rhymes and the way the song came together with the guitar and the beat. It was a fun song, and I think that till this day I can appreciate that moment.
We're going to take a quick break to help out another podcast.
Every 73 seconds, someone is sexually assaulted in the United States. We are here to tell you are not alone. Blackbird, an advocacy podcast, tells the stories of victims and survivors of true crime with a focus on the support these survivors need. We provide information for those who have endured trauma and for those who love someone who has. Tune in every Sunday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts to hear these stories of hope, survival, and empowerment. No one should go through this alone. We believe you.
That was Sarah from Blackbird, an advocacy podcast. Make sure to tune in and hit that subscribe button. Now, in 2016, and I still remember this day actually very clearly, our neighbor and one of our best friends and your cousins, you actually featured their kids in a music video.
Oh, wow.
You want to talk about that one?
Oh yeah, that one was great. I think that's going to be forever a song that oh my God, if you only knew what went into that song. But that song itself is such a great representation of everything that I am, pretty much, and the people who surround me. So I don't know how to explain this, where to start. That song was filmed in 3 cities, Ottawa, Montreal, and Toronto. So many things happened in the background while we were filming this. We put things together. So the song is called From Here.
The curse was once afar, a fallen path of flames. From dust to free, we are echoes. No stone is left unturned, reflections unexplained. The glass of time can scar exo. It all seems smaller from you. We've conquered all our fears. I've always wondered how it is to see from here. It all seems smaller from you. We've conquered all our fears. I've always wondered how it is to see from here.
It's all about feeling the way. Those are some of the words that I use in there. In other words, following your intuition. And that's exactly how that video and that song was created. It was coming at a time with extreme change. It was how was happening around me in terms of what was going on in terms of music, the music industry, and where I was going to be living and moving and going around. But this song was such a solid type of magical, masterpiece that came together, where I contacted one of my friends who lived in Toronto, who was a photographer, videographer, whom I worked with 10 years ago, but I knew that he was the one I had to contact for the vision for this video. And what we did is, part of it was filmed, he came with me. We went to Montreal. We filmed in 2 or 3 different locations there, and they were amazing locations. And it was crazy because the whole thing, and at that time I lived in Montreal, and the whole thing, came together even last minute. We decided to take drone shots the day before. The way that I don't know if you saw the music video, but there's a park bench that's right there on the water, but the water was flooded. And it's almost when you think about it, it was almost like predicting the future, because after that we had a flood. It was only a couple of years ago. And that often happens to me with music. I don't know what it is, but I'll write a song and I'll just put it out there, and it's me somehow, manifesting a future, because every time I look back, I'm like, man, that song just describes today. It's just crazy. But everything from the park bench to the locations that we picked. I mean, I was there scouting a location. I was very involved. When in my videos, I'm very hands-on, not only in the music side, but on the video production side. That whole music video, I edited, and I had my videographer co-direct, if you will, but I mainly directed it. And we essentially, like I said, it wasn't something where we wrote a story and we're like, okay, we're going to do this. It was everything was happening. And then at the end, the magic happened in post-production. It was almost like that, again, nouvelle autre fois, me looking back at everything that happened and then making sense of it. But again, we did have some concepts and some things that we wanted to shoot, drone shots. In Toronto, we went to, you might know this, I think it's called Bridal Veil, or where the
Bridal Path?
Bridal Path, yeah. Down there where there's those white type of mountains, which were phenomenal. And then in Montreal, there's other, which is funny because I would be scouting locations, or I'd be just there brainstorming in the park, and I would overhear, what happened was I saw 2 people flying a drone. And I said, wow. And we started talking, and I said, yeah, you know what? Where can I need a drone, tomorrow I'm shooting. And he's like, this is where you can get it, and this is what it is, and so on. The next day I went and I got it. But the thing is, and he's like, and I was telling him about my story, and then he's like, a good location, you'd have to go here. And it was this old type of, I don't want to say bomb shelter, but in Montreal, there's a place where it used to be a war type of, I don't even know what they call it anymore. It was called something de Howard. If I ever find it, I'll try to send it your way. But you'll go there and you'll see this old war type of bomb shelters, type of army place there. And then what happened is it got transformed into this huge artistic place where people would go and do graffitis on the wall, and it would be all transformed into like big, huge peace signs and rocks. And it was just the complete opposite. So I would have never known about that location if I had not just at the day before spoke with somebody along the way. And you know, like somebody who works in who does video or, you know, or photography or anything, they really need a strict schedule. You know, we're going to shoot stuff. But him in particular, there was this magic thing where he understood that if we left a little bit of flexibility, magic could happen. And that's essentially what happened. Like I could probably go on, but in a nutshell, that was pretty much the experience of that clip. And the beautiful part about it is that I had my two little nieces in there, or my cousin's daughters in there. That was last minute. They came in there. They played an amazing part. I had a homeless person who lived only like a block away from where I used to live, and I used to always stop by and say hello to him. And he'd invite me on the sidewalk for a beer, you know, and I'd sit there and chat with him. I said, you know what, I'm gonna get you in my video. And he came in my video nevertheless, you know, and I paid him and everything, and he was happy to be there. But he was the most intense and amazing character. I don't know if you saw the video, but he was wearing this jacket, a leather jacket, and it said pilot on the side. And then we were panning up his body, and then all of a sudden, like, you see his big beard, and then you see his face, and he played such an important character in the video, because what was happening is that when Christina, I call her my niece, when she was kind of passing her hand on that wall close to Bridle Path, which I don't know if you've seen it, but it's a huge painting on a huge wall, which was, I think it was painted there by either the Aboriginals or the Mexican type of organization or association to show kind of like the bond that Canada had with Mexico. And as she was passing her hand on the wall, at the same time, I was walking in a place where it was destruction. And that place was the Mirabel Airport. And that's another gem of a location that nobody will ever see that footage ever again, because it's completely destroyed. And we had drone shots and everything. But it, like I said, like, that's what I mean when I say it all came together. In the end, it was really much the best representation of who I am in a video. And I think I'll forever be proud of that. And there was hours and hours put into it, basically. Days.
Well, that was what I was going to ask next. How long does it usually take to make a video?
So, I mean, it depends, right? Like, because now I've been doing videos for 10 years. I do them for clients. I currently work in digital marketing. So right now, actually, at this very moment, I'm working with artists to help them in their careers with the company that I'm with in digital marketing. A lot of times, you know, creating video, a lot of it depends on the vision and how creative you are required to be. If it's my own vision, it might be a little easier, but I might also be a little bit more pickier. But a lot of times, if a client or an artist comes in and says, I want this, and you give them this, it can take an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. But a music video like this, especially when it involves, like, it's a different type of production. Anybody who does music videos will tell you this, is that it takes a lot longer than you think, especially because there are parts that, you know, you have the artist interpreting the song during the video. So you have to kind of match the words with the mouth, and sometimes the camera is too far, and sometimes it's not on tempo, and then, you know, and it has to be artistic and all that. So from the video from here, it actually took a good 2 months or something, even after we filmed everything. Filming is like, it'll take you 2-3 days, 4 days. That's and I'm not gonna.
The editing is the tough part.
Yeah, it's a tough part. I'm not going to devalue the part where you actually shoot the video, because it takes an extreme amount of resources. Even the fact that I went, that's the other thing behind the scenes, is that I had drove all the way down to Toronto for this video in my car, and my car broke down in Toronto, so I couldn't even go back. So I mean, all this was happening in the same week, in the same 3 days that I had to shoot this video. But that's what I'm saying. It was just such a, I don't know how to explain it. It was like a, you know, when they say like you got to put pressure on the diamond. Well, that's what it was.
Yeah. Yeah. I know like all too much about editing, and I don't know about the video editing portion of it, but now that we're into the podcast thing, you know, you record an episode, and that's the easy part. The hard part of it is going back and editing it. And we just did a live show on Monday night with a couple from Texas, and it was fantastic. We had so much fun. It was about a 3-hour show, and we had a bunch of people that came into the room and listened to the podcast. But now we want to put it up as an actual episode for those who haven't heard it. And I've worked on this thing for 3 straight days just to edit the audio portion of it.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not even a video that I have to match anything to, but you know, you want to get out that hissing in the background, and you want to get out a lot of the ums, and a lot of the, you know, kind of when your mouth gets dry, you make that that kind of clicking sound with your mouth and stuff like that. So, you know, you kind of want to edit all of that out because you go through and you listen to a lot of different audio from podcasts to music. And if it's not professionally done, you know, you kind of get tuned off from listening to it, right?
100%.
And I want our product to sound good, whereas I listen to other podcasts and no knock against them. That's their choice if they want to edit it or not, or whatever they want to do with it. But I can't listen to it that way because we became perfectionists now with all this editing. Yeah. And that's the toughest part of it. So I feel your pain, not as much as you have to go through, but for us just to edit the audio, we know it's a bugger, but for video it must be 10 times harder, even more.
100%. I wouldn't say necessarily 10 times. I mean, it's just what it does. It adds a dimension. It adds another dimension. It's kind of like you could probably, if you were to learn the skill, you'd probably be able to do it yourself as well. But what it does is now you're synchronizing audio, video, visuals, and it's a whole different sensation when you're going through it. Like audio podcasts is just that people could be listening to this in the car. They could be listening to this in their earphones, which more and more people, it was surprisingly enough, people are actually leaning more towards the podcast because of there's like a fly here. I'm trying to get rid of for the past second. Okay. But they're leaning more and more towards the podcast. But I actually did at some point, I had a little bit of a series that I had created called the Artist Capsule. And what I would do is I wanted this to be on Instagram and I wanted this to be like a new thing on Instagram and so on. But I discovered there were so many bugs. So you know the Instagram feature where you can kind of like, you can go live with someone?
Yeah.
So essentially, I ended up doing that. And I did about like 6 or 7 artists from around the world and it was going great. But it was more of an experiment because nobody had really attempted to do like a series on Instagram. Every other platform, yes, but Instagram was so experimental. And there I was trying to like share their video, play their songs. And then the editing at the end was, you know, times 10. Yeah. Especially an hour-long episode. You can imagine what goes into that. Gosh.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I mean, just a 3-hour episode took me 3 days. At the end of the day, I'm still not done with it. I'm still editing in like some advertisements and, you know, a couple of music here and there and, you know, sound effects and stuff like that. Not that we have that many of them, but you still have your intro to the podcast and then you have your outro at the end and stuff like that. So there's so many things that you have to put into editing and sometimes it drives you nuts, but if you want a good product, hey, you got to go with it, right?
You got to love it. You have to love it.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are you doing for music now? What are you up to now?
So I'd say that right now at this very moment, I'm working on projects, but more for other artists. So within our digital marketing company, I work more on the social media side of things. And our role is, well, especially when it comes to the music industry or an artist, social media is inevitable. Like you really have to master that. So right now, as we speak, we're working with an artist and he's just basically blowing up. We've got him on the iTunes top 100. He's actually in the 12th position in Canadian iTunes charts right now. So It's phenomenal. In other words, it's me being artistic, but not being the artist. So and helping using all the valuable experience that I've had over the past 10 years. So basically all that put into one. And now I'm just able to help like other artists.
So going into what you're doing for your career now, you're doing the digital marketing aspect of it and you're helping out with, I guess, different music artists to promote their stuff on social media.
Yeah.
We have this conversation amongst ourselves in these podcast group and everybody talks about SEO optimization. Everybody talks about proper hashtags. Everyone talks about different ways to try and get your product out there. Yeah. What is your suggestion as to try to hit the market, I guess, as hard as possible, the easiest way possible? And I know nothing is easy, but at the same time, how do you get your name out there properly?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, there's a difference, right? If you're an artist, it's going to be way different than if you're a local business. And if you're a personality, a public personality. So a lot of times what it is, it's understanding the platforms, first of all, and understanding what's popping and what's coming up. Like TikTok right now is caught the whole social media by storm. Essentially, social media at the very base it's an animal on its own and it has an algorithm. So, and it's changing. Like Instagram isn't what it used to be. Facebook isn't what it used to be. TikTok just came out of nowhere. Snapchat is still around, you know. Stories is becoming something that's really, really common. And you as an artist or you as an entrepreneur or you as a podcaster got to figure this thing out. Like, okay, where am I going to put this content? How am I going to get eyeballs on it? So, I mean, it really depends. It depends. If you're a dentist, maybe you don't need to be on, I don't know, like TikTok. But at the same time, you're limiting yourself because now more and more, I'm discovering that actually there are a lot of dentists on TikTok, but that's not the point. The point is, what format does the platform require for it to thrive, let's just say. So on Instagram used to be that, people used to post their pictures, and then you used to use some hashtags, and you'd get a lot of views. And more videos becoming important, even on Instagram. And I don't know if you remember, and back in the day, Instagram used to be much more for like, beauty and like aesthetics and photography and things like that. But more and more now, it's everything. You're going to get fitness, you're going to get dentists, you're going to get lawyers, you're going to get accountants, anything. So it became something that people were so scared to touch back in the day. But it's almost like you have to have this mindset that nothing is constant. It's constantly going to be changing. So to adapt, I would say in social media is the number one thing. But if you ask me for an artist, what's important, it's almost like they have the biggest job in terms of being present on all social media platforms. This guy has to work on Twitter, he has to work on TikTok, he has to work on YouTube, he has to push Facebook. I mean, what it is, it's because as an artist, what you want to do, even as a celebrity or as a personality, you want to be able to create content and push it out to as many platforms as you can. But by just pushing it, that's not enough. We have to be able to reformat them for the platform, repurpose them. Like you can't put a 20-minute YouTube video on Instagram. Well, you can now with IGTV, but you know what I mean? It's not the same. But YouTube right now is coming out with this, it's actually coming out with a version similar to TikTok and Instagram in terms of stories. Because now it knows. It's like when you're filming like this, everything is filmed like this now in mobile format because everybody's on their phones. They're looking at your stuff. Literally, people will be listening to this podcast on their phone. So even the image that you're going to use as the podcast, well, now even noticing that the formats of your profile images are now circular. They're all circles. In the past, it used to be square. So it's like if I were to be here and I can't give you like one piece of advice that's like, that's how you're going to do it. No, the way to be is to constantly be observing what's happening because TikTok was not there even 6 months ago. It was nowhere on the planet. And now it's just completely blown up. It's created influencers out of people who would never imagine themselves being influencers. So, and then here you have another category of people who are working so hard to get their content out, like you and I or whoever are trying to format it in a great way and edit it in a way where the quality's great, perfect. And then yet you have these other people who are just there with their phones and they're doing this and boom, it got 1 million views. So you got to understand the game. You got to understand what's going on because it's not all about talent, but it's more about format and finding the perfect fit. So that's what I would say in a nutshell.
So for me, I find like working with these groups that I'm in on Facebook or on Instagram, it's building actual connections with people. Sure, your product has to be put out there, but without building these connections, nobody's ever going to see or hear your stuff. Nobody's going to be able to tune into you. So I try to connect with a lot of people in these groups. I try to do a lot of collaborations with some of these people. And that's the way you're going to get your views out there. Right now, belonging to these groups has gotten us quite a few listeners, and which is a good thing. But I mean, it's not the be all end all for us to actually get our podcasts out there, but it helps. And that's why we're saying like we didn't know the exact formula. You're never going to know the exact formula for getting your podcast out there or whatever product you're trying to promote. But like you said, you have on YouTube, you have these little kids that are going on there and playing with these little dolls and they're getting 20 million views on this channel. And we're sitting there going like, okay, we're working so hard at this and all they're doing is playing with little toys. Like maybe that's something we need to do. Start playing with little toys on the internet and we'll get noticed, right?
Yeah. But I will say this, Tom, I will say what you just said there is probably the most important thing out of everything. And I don't know why I didn't say it in the beginning, but I think I agree with you 100%, which is connection. Now, how you connect, that's your problem. Like you got to figure it out. Like TikTok might be the way you connect. In TikTok, the format, like you'll see, like the people who come from Instagram and go to TikTok, you'll notice they have to change. The people who came from Vine, remember back when they used to be Vine and then Musical.ly and then all those, even Viners, even YouTubers are coming to like Superwoman. She's from Toronto. She's Lily, the YouTuber. She just only now joined TikTok. But now she's like, oh, well, yes, I can't ignore it. Like you have Jason Derulo, you have all the artists, you have Van Damme, you have like, you know what I mean? Like everybody and their mamas are on TikTok right now. But the thing is, you have to know how to use it. You can't come with the mentality of YouTube. If you come with a YouTube mentality on TikTok or even a podcast mentality, nobody's going to listen. It's not about that. It's about 15-second clips. It's about punchlines. It's almost like Vine, but it's like trend stacking the past. You're stacking trends, video plus hashtags plus sound sound bites now. We didn't have that before. Now you can get popular by a sound. So it's crazy. Like when you start understanding it, the most important thing is to connect, yes, and to adapt. Those two things, then you're unstoppable.
Well, using TikTok, if you're talking about that, you would more use it probably just to kind of do something funny or do something just to promote your podcast. You're not throwing your podcast down there. You're saying it's like a 15-second video. So you're just wanting to promote it on there, and that's pretty much it. And then try to drive your subscribers over to your channels for your podcast or to your YouTube channel or whatever it is that you advertise or you put your podcast out onto.
100%. And you know, Gary Vee says this, and I follow a lot of these people in social media because they're geniuses. And he says this. He says we have to stop putting our, I don't know what to call this. Like, let's just say you have a series or you have a title for your series or your podcast or whatever. We have to stop putting that on the pedestal. And you know what we have to do? We have to put the content on the pedestal. So that one piece of content, a 15-second thing, that's the most important thing right now. It's not so much the whole like global, you know, this is Joe and he's on the Today Show and blah blah blah. That nobody cares about that. They care about that one piece of content that's 15 seconds that essentially connects with them in that moment. If you can do that, and you'll end up connecting with millions, and then later on they're all going to be funneled and transferred to your Instagram, YouTube, or other channels just because of that piece of content. So it's like, it's the content. It's those pieces, those 15 seconds, those 5 seconds here and there. It's not so much the 1 hour and 2 hours, you know what I mean, that you and I work so hard for. It really is just those spurts. So maybe what you do is you create a TikTok channel and you just give like the highlights of an interview or so on. I see so many people doing this, or just giving tips. TikTok now is becoming an area where people can learn. Like, I don't know if you could see this. Basically, let me just show you. Like, if you look at, so if you see the TikTok, like at the top right corner now, there's a light bulb. Yeah. There's a light bulb. You click on that and it says learn on TikTok. So now all of a sudden now it's becoming educational. But the thing is, everything starts with entertainment. And then when you add education to it, it's like edutainment. So it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's, so just be observant and know those things. But again, it doesn't take away from your meta strategy, but it's just like those bits and pieces. Those are the things that can make the real difference for you. It's like,
so I had an interesting conversation with another podcaster that started at the same time I did, and he kind of posted something that said he reached his first episode that had 1,000 listens for just that one episode. Exactly. And I was like, hey, like how did you do that so quickly? And he said the trick is to get guests on your show because they help promote your show on their social media channels. Sure. So there's another, I guess, avenue that you can take in terms of getting the listens out and getting it out, right?
Cross promoting. Yeah. I mean, that's since the beginning of time. I mean, that's always been the case. I mean, people just having conversations, cross promoting each other. I mean, even the biggest YouTubers, the biggest influencers, they all do it. They know the power of what it is to create content in collaboration with others, because all of a sudden, first of all, you bring out themes and topics that you couldn't necessarily just think of on your own, but then at the same time, you're introducing you to a new audience. So
yeah, awesome. So is there anything else that you want to mention about your career path right now?
Well, it's basically ongoing. Music is still a big part of the objective here. It's far from long gone. It's kind of nice because you come back full circle and you end up working with artists like these that are actually hitting like charts and doing amazing things. It's definitely, my goal is to kind of come full circle and get back into music and release something pretty soon.
And where can people find your music right now?
Well, I'd say the best thing to do is to follow me as a person, because whatever I do, the music will follow. So if you just check out like XLA Music on Instagram or Facebook, those are probably the two main best places that you could find me. Whatever I'll be doing, I may be doing a little bit of music. I may be talking about life tips or just my passion in general or photography. But if you follow me as a person, the music will follow as well.
See, that's a good answer. I like that. It's follow me as a person. There's too many times that you see, give me a follow and I'll follow you back. And, you really don't kind of communicate with the person. But if you do follow the person and you start to see what their life is like and what's going on in their lives and, everything that branches off from their lives and their music or their careers and stuff, then you get to know the person. It's so much better.
And it doesn't limit you, right? You could do many things in life. If you just stick to, for example, I'm the music person, well then if you share something else, it's like, wait a minute, why is he? And you see this all often where you see actors taking on other projects. They create brands, they do things, they have clothing lines, they have, all kinds of stuff. So at the end of the day, you are the kind of like the central type of hub, if you will. And, you just bear fruit. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, awesome. But before we go tonight, I have kind of a request from our mutual contact there. And he said that he wants you to explain a late night trip to a Chinese restaurant in Montreal. So he told me that you need to explain this on the show.
Wow. Okay. That's a pretty deep one. Okay. John, my cousin, came to visit in Montreal, and we said, let's meet up and have dinner at a Chinese restaurant, a Chinese buffet downtown, kind of like in the Chinatown of Montreal. And so on my way there, basically, I'll just get to the end of the story. I surprised him, and I was supposed to show up alone, but I showed up with a guest. And the guest was somebody who I had met along the way. And she was singing in the metros, and she was homeless, and she was just singing with a opera style. And I stopped, and I'm like, and of course, Joe, or AKA Excella, being the artist or style, like just observing life as I normally do. I just stopped and I wanted to observe. And then I even questioned, and that's how I normally get inspiration. But in that moment, I was like, wow, like, what are you doing singing in the metro and this and that? And she was like, all of a sudden, very defensive and so on. And she obviously needed, to survive at that moment and needed help financially. So I'm like, yeah, like I just ended up giving her $5 and I started talking to her. She just was shocked a little bit because I had stopped and paid attention to her kind of. And then we started walking together in the metro. And by the time I knew it, before I knew it, we were walking, and I'm like, you know what? Why don't you just join me and we'll go to dinner? And I'm on my way to my to see my cousin, and she, we'll have dinner all of us together. And she says, you don't mind? And I said, and so we all went. But along the way, I had this incredible conversation with her, and she was like telling me about how the hardships that she's been going through, and like how her dad was drugging her, and basically how she ended up there. And she was educated but just somehow ended up on the streets. So it just became this story of like, don't judge a book by its cover. So when I ended up showing up there at the restaurant, John was there. We basically introduced her to him, and he didn't know what was going on. He was like, okay, it's your friend, whatever. Okay. So we sat down, and then she started more and more, and we started talking. By the end of it, John was like, what? Like, she's extremely intellectual. I don't get it. And then I explained to him later on, because during that time, it wasn't like the time or place, but afterwards, she was so thankful for that. And I had walked her back after John left. I'd walked her back to another metro station, I guess. And she said, listen, I want to thank you. I want to give you something. And she pulled out of her garbage bag an album, and I don't know if I have it here. Do I? It says, if I did, that would be magical. I actually don't, but it's a CD, okay? And it was Alan Jackson's CD from a garbage bag that she had pulled, and that's all her belongings were in there, and she wanted to thank me with that. And that, it basically said, the album name was Here in the Real World. And that just like hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, wow, because I believe things happen for a reason. And she signed it on the inside, and she signed it Copper Rose, and that was her name. And she has an artist name, I guess. She was like kind of like a poet. So, and then she wanted to keep in touch, so I gave her my contacts. A month later, I think it was Christmas, I get a letter, long letter, 2-3 page letter, handwritten, and her basically saying like, thank you so much. I did not believe in humanity anymore until you did this, and and she basically just thanked me so much. And she basically also kind of like used it as an outlet. But it was incredible, like a handwritten letter, 3 pages, and then followed up by a Christmas card. So it's just incredible, like that type of, and that's one of a couple of situations that I've been in like that, where people would be like, whoa, what are you doing? Like, you're kind of like, you're crossing the line here, you're doing whatever. But it just shows you like what happens when you really, really have that human connection, and that was an amazing experience for me, and life lesson, to be honest.
And I think that's what it comes back to, is the human connection part of it. So much that we're wrapped up on the internet and social media, and there's not enough human connection, and we don't make those connections outside of our homes or just our group of friends or kind of our social circles. And I think it's very important that you make these kind of connections. I mean, we used to work with a homeless mission, and we used to talk to a lot of the people that were out in the shelters and stuff like that. And it's just, the stories that you hear are just heartbreaking, and they're inspirational and all that kind of stuff. And it amazes me. So John actually told me that he wanted me to ask you about this story, and that you should be telling it online.
That one's for you, John. But on that topic too, Tom, what was important, what you said, is that a lot of people forget this, but on social media, you might have something like 5 likes or 10 likes on a post or this or that. But in your mind, you should be thinking, if these 5 or 10 people walked into your house, you'd have a full house. Like that's how we should be looking at it. Like, people will be like, oh, I only got 10 views. That's 10 people that viewed it. So you mean like, I think that's when you look at it that way, now you're starting to understand what it means to connect. Because every person who's listening to your podcast right now, and who is liking it or commenting on it, it may not be 1 million. It may eventually get to 1 million. But the whole point is, I think if we make that contact one-on-one with each of them and appreciate the ones who are listening at this time, it's going to be a lot easier to scale later because that's how it's going to be built.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're going to probably wrap this up unless there's anything else you have to say.
No, I'm good, Tom. Thanks very much for having me. It was real great.
Oh, no, thanks for coming on the show. Okay, so we're going to wrap up this episode. We want to thank Joe for coming on the show today. If there are any other social media links that you want to kind of just give out right now, here's your chance.
XLA Music, basically everywhere on Facebook, Instagram, everywhere else.
Perfect. And we're going to post those in the show notes, and we're actually posting on our website as well. So again, we're going to thank Joe for coming on the show. And as always, stay safe, be kind to each other, and we'll see you later.
Here we